The diamond ring slipped from her trembling fingers and rolled under the marble table. In the middle of her wedding reception, surrounded by New York's most powerful people, Maya stood frozen, staring at the bloodstain blooming on the hem of her white gown. No one else saw it yet, but she knew it wasn't hers. That night, her fairy tale marriage began with someone else's secret. Maya Patel had never dreamed of marrying into money. She used to dream of escaping her tiny apartment in Queens, of quiet mornings, of painting under sunlight that didn't come through dusty blinds. But fate doesn't ask. It commands. When she first met Adrian Cole, heir to the billion-dollar Cole dynasty, she was just a barista in a downtown coffee shop. He walked in with his tailored arrogance and left a $100 tip for a $3 latte. He didn't even look back. Until the second time he came in. "Black coffee. Extra strong," he said. "Bitterness suits you," Maya muttered under her breath. And to her surprise, he smiled. That smile had changed everything. Now, standing under a chandelier that probably cost more than her entire life, Maya was Mrs. Adrian Cole, the name the tabloids couldn't stop whispering about, the poor girl from Queens who married Manhattan's golden son. Reporters whispered, "She's lucky." "It's charity, not love. She'll never fit in." They were right, not about the luck, but the love. Adrian's mother, Evelyn Cole, made sure Maya never forgot where she came from. Every glance, every icy smile at the dinner table, every carefully chosen word to remind her she didn't belong in silk and marble. "Money can't buy grace," Evelyn had told her once, her words dipped in venom and perfume. Maya had smiled back. "No, but it can buy you hypocrisy." She had learned to fight quietly, to wait. At the reception, Adrian's family shimmered in designer smiles. Cameras flashed like lightning, and Maya played the perfect bride. Then she noticed something. Across the room, Evelyn's assistant slipped a folded note into Adrian's pocket. He read it, expression unreadable, then walked out. Maya's heart clenched. She excused herself, ignored the polite laughter around her, and followed him down a long hallway lined with mirrors. She heard his voice before she saw him. "This isn't the time, Claire." A woman's whisper came back. "You said it would be over by now." Maya froze. Her heart, her breath, her hope. Everything stopped. From the corner, she saw them. Adrian and a tall, elegant woman in black, standing too close, too familiar. The woman touched his face. "Does she even know?" He didn't answer. That silence was louder than betrayal. Back at the reception, Maya smiled through the storm. Cameras loved her sadness because it looked like grace, but inside she was collapsing. Later that night, when the guests were gone and the champagne had gone flat, Adrian walked in, his tie loosened, smelling like someone else's perfume. She didn't ask where he'd been. She simply said, "I saw you." He looked at her for a long moment, his eyes cold and pitying. "You'll get used to it. Everyone does." She laughed, not out of humor, but heartbreak. "Everyone but me." Hours later, in the privacy of their penthouse, Maya stood in front of the mirror, still in her wedding dress. The silk shimmered white, except for that faint stain of red at the hem. She crouched and touched it. Sticky. Fresh. It wasn't hers. There were whispers outside, a commotion in the hallway. One of the servants shouted, "Call security." When she stepped out, she saw 2 guards rushing toward the elevator. Someone had been hurt. And in that chaos, she saw Claire's diamond bracelet lying on the marble floor. The same one she had seen earlier that night, on the woman who touched her husband's face. Adrian came in, pale and furious. "Maya, whatever you saw, stay quiet. For your own good." She stared at him. "What did you do?" He didn't answer. He just left, slamming the door. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "You don't know what kind of family you've married into. Don't trust anyone, especially him." The sender's name flashed briefly before the message vanished. Claire. Maya's fingers tightened around the phone. The stain, the silence, the secrets. It was all connected, and in that moment, she made a silent promise. She would find out what they'd done, not for love, for revenge. As dawn broke over the city skyline, Maya stood on the balcony overlooking the glittering towers of Manhattan. The wind tugged at her veil, half torn, half beautiful, like her life. She whispered to herself, "They think I'm weak because I loved him, but love is the easiest way to destroy someone." She smiled faintly, her eyes burning. "And I'm going to destroy them all." Maya slept like she hadn't in months. Sudden, shallow bursts between the ache and the adrenaline. Dawn found her on the sofa, wedding veil tangled in her hair, the hem of her dress folded over her knees. The penthouse looked like a museum that had lost its purpose. Portraits of the Coles watched from marble walls. Their eyes were polite. Their approval was a currency she didn't own. The text from Claire lingered on her phone like a breadcrumb. "You don't know what kind of family you've married into. Don't trust anyone, especially him." The word especially cut deeper than the accusation. It suggested knowledge, risk, danger. Claire had meant to warn someone, or to blackmail, or to confess. Maya didn't know which, and that ignorance burned. She hadn't called the police that night. Adrian had ordered quiet. Evelyn had implied scandal would be disastrous. The family's name was a fortress. The law bent politely at its gates, but silence was complicity, and Maya felt suffocated by it. If the Coles could hide a bloodstain inside their walls, she could pry open the lock. She called Rosie first. Rosie from Queens, her oldest friend, the one who laughed at her silly paintings and cried when Maya left for the wedding. Rosie answered on the third ring, a cigarette in her fingers, voice rough and steady. "You okay?" Rosie asked. The question was a lifeline. "No," Maya said. "I need help." "You want a ride to the hospital? To the precinct? To the nearest bridge?" Rosie joked, then softened. "Whatever. I'll be there in 20. Rosie arrived with a backpack of practicality. Water, a thermos, a spare shirt. She looked at Maya's gown and didn't flinch. It was the company of people who didn't care about glitter that made Maya breathe easier. "First thing," Rosie said while they ate egg sandwiches in the car, "we say Claire's bracelet. Where'd you find it?" "In the hallway. Near where the guards were running." Rosie rubbed her jaw. "That's a breadcrumb, too. You sure you want to poke a hornet's nest, babe? Those people don't play." "I have to know," Maya said, "even if knowing kills me." They started simple. Hospital records, police blotters, a handful of no's, and the kind of bureaucracy that assumes the poor are forgettable. They learned a name, Claire Vance, linked to a late-night disturbance 2 weeks earlier. Claire Vance had been treated for a laceration and later discharged. The hospital records were oddly sparse, redacted with a level of care that suggested someone had hired better lawyers than the hospital did. Maya felt something cold and precise click into place. The bracelet had Claire's initials engraved inside, a small V. Someone had tried to erase Claire that night, or to bury her. Either way, Claire had left marks, on the floor, on Adrian's hand, maybe on his conscience, if he had one. Maya's next stop was the building where Claire lived, an aging brownstone a few blocks from the Hudson with fire escapes like iron ladders to nowhere. The super, a man named Jorge with tobacco-stained fingers, remembered the night. He remembered a delivery truck, the sound of a scuffle, and later a black sedan idling too long at the curb. He remembered a stranger, well-dressed, expensive cologne, slipping inside the lobby alone. "How'd you know it was her?" Jorge asked, squinting. "Name's common." "There's a bracelet," Maya said. "I want to know if anyone remembers who left in that car." Jorge rubbed his chin. He fished a cigarette from a pack, lit it, and then, without asking for money, without judging, he told her about a security camera in the alley. "We keep old footage for a week," he said, "but sometimes I save things for myself. You don't look like trouble, miss. You want it?" The camera footage wasn't glamorous. It was grainy and cramped with the kind of perspective that preserves truth cheaply. Maya watched the loop twice, then 3 times. At 2 in the morning, a woman in a dark coat moved quickly toward the building. The timestamp flickered like a heartbeat. A man followed. Tall, broad shoulders, the kind of posture only money buys. He held her arm, not tenderly. Later, a figure in a suit emerged alone, coat collar up, face turned away. He walked with a limp that looked like confidence hiding something heavier. Maya paused the frame. The face was nondescript, but the collar and the gait were familiar. It was the way Adrian carried himself when he wasn't trying to be admired. Eyes distant, shoulders protective of secrets. For a moment, she wanted to close the laptop and go back to pretending, to the easy lie of wealth. Then she thought of the blood on her dress and the bracelet on the floor, and she could not. She paid Jorge and told him she needed more. He shuffled, asked for an extra 100, then more. For trouble. Maya paid it, no questions asked. Bribes taste like metal in the mouth, but they were sometimes the only currency reality respected. From the alley footage, they traced a route to a private clinic uptown. It was the kind of place people used for discreet procedures and discreet bills. No paperwork flatter than a rumor. The receptionist was polite, practiced, and gave them a name. A patient checked in that night under a different name, bandaged and restless. Someone had wanted anonymity. Someone had achieved it. Rosie suggested a private investigator, someone with licenses and patience and not much opinion about the families they scratched. Maya agreed and met Raphael Klein in a cramped office with a poster of the New York skyline and a fax machine that still hummed like an animal. Raphael's eyes were pragmatic. He asked how much truth she wanted and how much she was willing to lose in pursuit of it. All of it, Maya said. Except what keeps me alive. Raphael smiled like payment had already been made. Okay, that's a start. They started to pry open doors. Raphael's first deliverable was not a smoking gun but a frayed rope, a record of payments, large sums, going from a coal corporate account to a shell company named after a florist, and from that florist to an off-book clinic. The money trails smelled like guilt and lawyers. Someone had invested in silence. Maya watched the receipts with a strange mixture of revulsion and relief. Money was the thing that had lifted her into a life she pretended she deserved, and it was the thing that could hide horror. It struck her as simple and obscene. Wealth could buy both roses and erasure. She started to wear Adrian's shirt when he wasn't looking. It smelled like his cologne, a fragrance that felt designed to keep people from asking questions. She wore it because the fabric made her feel closer to him, and because it reminded her of the man she had believed was gentle and complicated. Not the man who briskly instructed doormen to clear rooms, not the man who tolerated an assassin's silence from his family. One night, she confronted Evelyn. The woman was at the piano, fingers moving over keys that made music like money, controlled, purposeful. Evelyn's voice was the sound of silk rubbing stone. "You should be careful," Evelyn said without turning. "Marriage takes adjustments." "What about the woman whose bracelet I found?" Maya asked. Her voice was small under the chandelier's opulence. Evelyn didn't miss a beat. "People from Claire's world make brash decisions. It's part of their charm." She paused, then added softer, "You must learn to let small things go." Maya left with her hands clenched so tight her knuckles hurt. Evelyn's words were neither a denial nor an admission. They were a test, and Maya had failed it by asking. Or perhaps Evelyn had passed a message along. Keep your questions quiet, and you may live in peace. Or maybe, Maya's mind supplied a more dangerous version. Evelyn was teaching her how families survive, by excising what embarrassed them. As Maya dug deeper, she found the most ordinary betrayals were the most useful weapons. She befriended Adrian's driver, Luis, who liked to talk when he thought no one listened. Luis had been with the Coles for a decade, and his loyalty was a complex weave of fear and affection. He told Maya a story about Claire, how she had once stormed into the Cole offices demanding repayment for some slight, how Adrian had been cold and conciliatory and then absent, as if erasing a name from a ledger could erase a person's voice. "Adrian doesn't believe in messy endings," Luis said. He pays. He smiles. He walks away. Maya kept a notebook of facts and feelings, of receipts and suspicious silences. She recorded the names of lawyers and the make of cars. She learned to decipher the code that families like the Coles used to translate inconvenience into absence. She learned how many people profit from a quiet secret. One evening, Raphael called with something small and terrible, a strip of surveillance footage from the clinic's alley. It was grainy, like a memory half remembered. The timestamp was 2:14 a.m.
A tall man emerged,
a shadow crossed the
sleeve
frame,
dark with stain.
He adjusted a cuff as if to hide the blotch, then walked with a steady, practiced ease toward a waiting black sedan. For a heartbeat, he paused and looked up. The profile was unmistakable. Adrian's jaw, the slight bend at the nose, the manner of someone used to being forgiven. Maya watched until the image shook. Her hands went cold. The footage didn't show what happened inside the clinic, how Claire had been treated, or whether she had been left for dead or rescued. It only showed Adrian leaving, and that was enough. It wasn't evidence in a court, but it was proof to a heart that wanted to be sure. It was a thread she could follow. She replayed the clip until Raphael warned her to stop. "You need to be careful, Ms. Cole," he said. "The Coles are not sentimental. They're ruthless when they think something's threatening their reputation."
"What do they do to threats?"
Maya asked. Raphael didn't answer directly. "They make problems. Disappear." Maya stopped sleeping again. The city shifted shape at night, hungry and indifferent. She kept the footage on a small flash drive hidden in the hem of her robe like contraband. She wore guilt like a second skin. She loved Adrian once. Maybe she still did in an old, stubborn corner. But love had pivoted into something sharper, a decision to not be used as an invisible shield. Weeks passed. The tabloids turned toward other marriages, other scandals. Evelyn smiled at the cameras like a woman who has rehearsed both apology and condemnation. Adrian sat across from Maya at dinner and said comfortably, "You should go back to painting." "I haven't painted since the gallery," she said. "You'll have time now," he said. "You're well taken care of." She studied his face in the reflection of the wine glass. There was exhaustion and an ease that belonged to privilege. There was also an absence where something soft should be. She thought of Claire's bracelet and the blood on her gown, and the grainy footage of a man who looked like the person she had willingly married. She thought of the text that had vanished like a ghost. Then, one rainy afternoon, a package arrived at their door. It had no return address. The courier looked at Maya with barely hidden curiosity when she signed. The box was small and wrapped in plain brown paper. Inside, nestled in newspaper, was Claire's diamond bracelet. It was dusty, one clasp bent. Alongside it lay a folded photograph. She unfolded the photo with fingers that trembled and saw a blur of an alley, a timestamp, and in the corner a handwritten note. "Find the truth before they do." The handwriting was precise, deliberate. A woman who had been taught to hide her rage under neat strokes. Maya's phone buzzed. An unknown number. A voice, altered, whispered, "You have what you need. Don't trust his apologies." Before she could reply, footsteps sounded in the hallway. Measured, familiar. The penthouse door swung open. Adrian stepped in, rain beating on his coat, the faint shimmer of a bruise near his temple she hadn't seen before. He looked at her with an expression that mixed astonishment and something like triumph. "You're awake," he said softly. "We need to talk." Maya stood in front of the window, the city below trembling with light. The bracelet and the photograph lay on the table like relics of another life. Behind her, Adrian's voice was calm, careful, as if every word had been rehearsed in mirrors. "You shouldn't have gone looking," he said. Maya turned slowly. "I wasn't looking. I was surviving." He stepped closer. The bruise on his temple looked older now, like a lie healed over. "Whatever you think you know about Claire, it's complicated." "Complicated?" she whispered. "There was blood on my wedding dress." He flinched. It was small, almost invisible, but she saw it. He hadn't expected her to still be that sharp. "You don't understand how this family works," he said. "Mistakes happen and we clean them quietly. That's how it's always been." She laughed, soft and strange. "And what am I, Adrian? Another mistake you clean quietly?" He didn't answer. In that silence, Maya knew the marriage was over. Maybe it had been over before it began. She reached for the bracelet and held it up to the light. "Claire's alive," she said. "Or she was, long enough to warn me, and she left proof." Adrian's eyes flickered, fear, guilt, calculation. All three. He moved toward her, gentle but dangerous. "You can't win against them. My mother—" "I'm not fighting your mother," she said. "I'm fighting a system that thinks women like me are disposable." He froze. Then Maya did something that frightened him more than any threat could. She smiled. "I recorded everything," she said quietly. "The night you came home with blood on your cuff, the call from Evelyn's lawyer, the hospital payments, the shell companies, all of it." His face turned white. "You wouldn't." "I already did," she said. "And by morning, everyone will know what the perfect Cole family hides behind their polished walls." He reached for her wrist. "Maya, stop, please. You'll destroy everything." She pulled free. "No, you did that the moment you lied." The rain outside thickened, turning the glass into a mirror. For a second, she saw them both reflected. Him, the man who thought power was protection, and her, the girl who had learned that love without respect is just captivity. When she left the apartment, she didn't look back. Rosie was waiting in the car with Raphael. The city was still asleep, the streets washed silver by rain. Maya handed Raphael a flash drive, the kind of small thing that could ruin empires. "Are you sure?" he asked. "Once it's out, there's no going back." Maya nodded. "That's the point." They drove through the night toward a small office in Brooklyn, an independent journalist's studio, one that lived off scandal but respected truth, the kind of place the Coles could never buy. Maya watched the skyline fade in the rearview mirror, each tower a reminder of how high people can build their lies. When the journalist, a woman named Kira, opened the door, she took the drive without question. "If half of this is real," she said, "they're finished." "It's all real," Maya said. Her voice didn't shake. She walked out before Kira could ask for an interview. She didn't want to tell her story yet. She wanted to live it. By the next evening, New York was burning with whispers. News channels ran the story like a fever. Cole family scandal, fraud, assault, and secret payouts. Anonymous sources, leaked footage, confidential transfers. Evelyn's perfect smile cracked across every screen. Maya watched it all from a cheap hotel room overlooking the river. The city didn't care who fell, only that someone did. That was New York's justice. Fast, brutal, indifferent. Rosie turned down the volume. "You did it, girl. They're finished." Maya didn't answer right away. She was staring at her reflection in the dark window. The dress was gone, the jewelry pawned, the name discarded. What stared back was a woman with nothing left to lose, and that was freedom. 3 days later, the police found Claire Vance alive in a private rehabilitation home upstate. The woman who had once been Adrian's secret was now the star witness against him. She confirmed everything: the threats, the assault, the hush money. The Cole empire crumbled under its own weight. Evelyn disappeared from the city's social scene. Adrian resigned from the company, and the tabloids that once called Maya lucky now called her brave. But Maya didn't read the articles. She didn't need headlines to validate her pain. She went back to Queens, rented a small studio above a bakery. The air smelled of sugar and traffic. She started painting again, this time not for escape but for memory. Her first canvas was a city skyline under storm clouds, a single light glowing in one window. She named it Freedom. Sometimes at night she thought about Adrian. Not with love, not even with hatred. Just curiosity. How someone so powerful could be so small inside. She wondered if he thought of her too, the woman who had walked into his world poor and walked out dangerous. Rosie would stop by with coffee and gossip, laughing at the absurdity of the rich falling apart. "You should tell your story one day," she said. "People would listen." Maya smiled faintly. "Maybe. But for now, silence feels better." She stepped out onto the fire escape, the wind tangling her hair. The city hummed below, honking taxis, laughter, rain. Somewhere in that chaos was the life she had fought for. She closed her eyes and whispered to herself,